Deeyah ble født på Ullevål sykehus i Oslo i 1977 av norsk-pakistanske foreldre. 17 år gammel slo hun gjennom som artist med albumet Get Off My Back. Deeyahs fremtoning provoserte noen så kraftig at hun ble forsøkt brakt til taushet med drapstrusler og vold. Hun ble nødt til å forlate Norge, og har siden levd i utlandet med artistnavnet Deeyah. Her lånebilen vår.
Så flott, så flott. Men det går greit for deg på engelsk, altså? Det er ikke ubehagelig?
Ja, for du vil helst snakke engelsk.
Ja, for det stopper opp hele tiden. For jeg har jo ikke snakket eller skrevet norsk på 17 år. Cirka 17 år, det er ganske lenge.
Så vi må først finne ut, er du norsk inni, pakistansk utapå? Pakistansk litt på utsida, og mye norsk inni. Hvordan er det?
Herregud. Altså, det er sånn at altså, jeg er både pakistansk og norsk. Jeg klarer ikke å si at jeg er så mye pakistansk og så mye norsk, liksom. Nei, det går ikke an å si sånn.
Nei,
det går ikke.
Fortell oss på programmet om vi kunne liksom satt det sånn, finne ut hva det er.
Nei, det går ikke det, altså.
You're sick and tired of talking about your own story, going from Norway and stuff, I've understood. And I'm not really sure what the aspects of it is, how problematic it was.
No, it was very problematic. It was very, very problematic. And it was actually my mom and me who ended up making the decision. And I mean, she was crying. She was in so much pain. And she was saying, you have to go. You know that, right? And I said, yes, I do. And she said, we can't protect you. So, you know. And I left a fairly decent career. I left all my friends, I left my entire family, I left everything that I knew and that I loved. But I think the hardest thing for me was, at that time, to feel like if I was blonde and blue-eyed and a real Norwegian, right? Would I have been treated the same way? And when I say treated the same way, I don't mean the abuse that I got or even the threats that I got, because that a lot of people have to endure. If you're a woman from my background, many people have to go through that. I think what was the hardest for me at the time was complete silence from Norwegian society, Norwegian media, Norwegian everything. Nobody really posed the questions of, is this okay? Is it okay for this to happen in our society? Is it okay that this happens to a 17-year-old? Is it okay that a 17-year-old feels that she has no choice left but to leave her home? At that time, I felt heartbroken. I felt like my heart was broken by Norway in a way.
It's very it's frustrating on behalf of all of us talking about your story then that 4 million people couldn't help you and say we'll protect you from these marginal men or whoever forced you to leave. That's a big problem, that you weren't offered protection from the community as a whole.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. From a very young age, I was very aware that as a woman, I was that I was not the same, and that a lot of women around me in my life, in my parents' community, that they were treated differently. So in the outside world, I would see women very empowered and very much included in businesses and in professional life, in the public life and politics, in every sphere of society. But in my parents' communities, I saw that wasn't necessarily reflected. So I think I've had a very up-close and personal understanding of what it is like to be a woman in a community that is structured around honor and shame. I think I have a very personal experience of and a personal understanding of what it is like to find yourself in this in-between space of you're not quite this enough, you're not quite that enough. And I've also had very personal experiences of my personal choices and my decisions for me, for just me, my being, my individual being, conflicting with the expectations of the group, if you will, and how painful that was. And the reactions that came as a result of that were extraordinarily difficult for a 17-year-old at that point.
Og i sitt videre arbeid har Deeyah tatt fatt i hvilke grufulle konsekvenser taushet og mangel på inngripen kan føre til. I den Emmy-belønnede dokumentarfilmen om den britisk-kurdiske jenta Banaz viser hun at det blant annet er storsamfunnets svik som gjør æresdrap mulig.
But could you just explain what her story was in some short sentences?
Betrayal. I think it's well, it's different things, but I think the hard part is the betrayal. I think she was betrayed by her family, who killed her. She was betrayed by her community, who remained silent. And she was betrayed by British society.
People following me, or still now they follow me. Anytime, if anything happens to me, it's them.
They killed her there just for being in love. I mean, sometimes I am thinking why love should be so hated.
If she was in my life would be orange and yellow.
The reason I told this story as opposed to other stories, because when I first started making the film, I was going to make a film about honor killings. It wasn't going to be about Banaz. It was going to be about 4 or 5 different cases. And Banaz was going to be one of the cases. And the reason it ended up being just about Banaz was, a lot of people have asked me, did you pick her story because her story was particularly violent and her story was particularly horrible? And the answer is actually no. All of these cases are terribly violent and ruthless and absolutely vicious. The difference in this story versus all the other ones is, despite all of the horror, there was love. Not just the love that she experienced for a few months in her life, but the love that's been poured towards her after she died, and particularly the love of this police detective, Caroline Good, who hunted down, essentially, Banaz's killers and brought them to justice.
Well, and the whole tragedy about this case for me is about that child-parent relationship that's gone horribly, horribly wrong. That poor young woman's body in that suitcase. I certainly felt that we had become surrogate parents, because we didn't feel that she was loved by her own parents, that we took over that parenting role. But, and that doesn't mean that we were too close to the investigation. It just meant that we were showing her love and respect, and that someone should love her, someone should care. So we did, and we still do.
I was really struck by Caroline. In one of her answers, just started talking and started saying, I love Banaz, and I feel like she wasn't loved by her family, so I feel that I want to take on that role. And I was really moved by that, because I'm not used to police speaking that way. And to me, that was the defining moment when I realized this is the story that I actually have to tell. And the reason for that is Caroline symbolizes what we need in order to do something about this. And what we need is that we need people to care. We need people to dare to care about these girls, to dare to speak about these things, and to dare to love. Who killed Banaz? You're innocent, then who killed Banaz? Who killed Banaz? In a lot of these communities, you're not just the property of your father. You're the property of the whole community. You are collective. As a woman, you are collective property. We have to decide if these people, or me, or people who look like me, do you accept me as Norwegian? Because if you accept me as Norwegian, then treat me like I'm Norwegian. In the most basic way. In the most fundamental human ways, treat me like I'm Norwegian. Don't treat me based on what men in my parents' society decide that I should be treated as. I'm a Norwegian. I'm not Pakistani. We left those countries. Our parents left those countries. And when I'm saying all this, I'm not saying that people shouldn't hold on to their languages and their traditions and the beauty and the real rich aspects of the societies that our parents come from and the cultures that they come from. But when it hurts people, when people are dying or suffering or not being able to fulfill their potential as just human beings, then that's not okay. That means we have to start treating each other the way that we want individual human beings in our society to be treated.
But if we feel that the immigrants don't signal that they feel Norwegian, should we still treat them as Norwegian?
They still have certain basic rights, yeah. Yeah. Because that has nothing to do with what's coming in. That has to do with what Norway is. And to me, what at the heart of what Norwegianness or Norwegian society at least is based on is equality, it is freedom, it is human rights for all, and the right to freedom of expression and the right to the freedom of choice to live and breathe as you choose, as long as you don't harm and hurt other people. That has to be universal and has to be universally extended to every single human being living in Norway. Regardless of whether somebody wants to accept that or not, it has to be available. You don't have the right to just take that away. Does that make sense?
So what is the message to me, to any individual in a civil society? What should we do?
I think don't look the other way.